Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today.
And it is me, the Lone Vault Wanderer.
Oh, yes, we are collaborating. This is going to be nice. Talk about Borderlands 3, Loney Pony.
With no script, no nothing. Yeah. We're just going to shoot the shit and see how it goes.
So expect a lot of stuttering, stumbling, laid back, fuck-ups, all that stuff. But what we wanted to focus on with this video was potential playable characters in Borderlands 3. Every game introduces a host of new heroes. At the end of Borderlands 2's lifespan, we had 6 playable characters. So Lone and I were putting together a list and thinking, what playable characters will there be in the third entry? So Lone, would you like to kick off the list?
I would love to kick off the list. And this is one that, as Matty mentioned before this video, almost everyone else has suggested, so it's not an entirely original idea. And even though with Vault Hunters that are playable characters that aren't usually people that have appeared in previous games aside from Claptrap and maybe one other, but I would love to see Tiny Tina come back. I've consistently said that she's my favorite character in Borderlands and probably video games in general, and usually we see her as an NPC, which is great, and when we interact with her, it's awesome. But being able to play as her and have her constant voice dialogues and just jokes and all that crazy stuff she does, that would be so much fun.
That's the thing. She'd definitely be that exciting character to have in the party.
Yeah.
She's a demolitions expert in the Borderlands universe, so she definitely would have, if she aged a couple of years, a pretty cool skill set to mess around with, a really explosive focused build, I'd imagine. Because I've been playing in my recent Borderlands 2 playthrough as Krieg, and he has a pretty explosive focused build in one of his skill trees, so I imagine Tiny Tina would be something along those lines, so she could definitely fit in a gameplay perspective as well.
Well, absolutely, and it doesn't matter which of these characters. Like, I don't mind, for example, if in Borderlands 2 Tiny Tina was a demolitions expert and they kind of retconned that a little bit if she was a playable character, just so she fit in with every other playable hero. Like, I wouldn't really mind that, because you could easily explain that away with story. Like, you could say, oh, Tiny Tina has suddenly become interested in melee weapons, for instance. Like, I don't necessarily care if it doesn't fit in that way.
It would work. It's Borderlands, so they could just throw a whatever explanation our way, and it just fits the craziness of the universe.
Exactly.
Another playable character we thought would fit is one that's been appearing since the very beginning, and that's Moxie.
Hell yeah.
She's been intertwined with so many of our heroes in a sexual fashion, very much so. And I think that kind of raunchy humor would fit really well in a Borderlands squad.
It really would. And, I like some games that kind of push the boundaries a little bit, and Moxie's this kind of... I don't know why, she kind of reminds me of the character in Bayonetta. Yeah. She's just like this kind of seductress that makes sexual jokes but never really gets with anyone, but she has this kind of dark, like, I guess, mean streak to her. If you piss her off, then she'll let you know about it. And she'd be awesome just to kind of have as a companion to bounce off, discussions and conversations with other characters. That would be absolutely amazing. And she is a fan favorite too.
Yeah, I mean, banter between like her and, we'll just use our previous example, if they were in a party, Tiny Tina, that would actually that'd be really interesting, because,
that'd be funny as fuck.
Yeah, some crude things would definitely fly between the two of them.
Definitely. And we were talking about this before we started, but here's the thing. We don't know if we're going to... Usually most Borderlands as a playable character will have a siren, but because there's only a certain number of sirens in the world of Borderlands, could there be a possible way that somehow Moxie is a siren and she just doesn't know it yet?
Yeah. I don't know.
My God. Could you imagine that? Some lore expert's probably going to say, well, that's just not possible, Lone. But it would still be pretty cool.
There can only be, I think they said 6 in the universe, and so there is room for a couple more. That would be very interesting to see Moxie all of a sudden turn into a siren. But the thing is, just the demeanor of a siren, when you look at Maya, you look at Lilith, Moxie would be just this polar opposite character, and that would work really well now that I think about it.
It would be different, but it would be an absolute blast, to be honest. And here's the thing, we need a siren of some sort. That Siren's probably one of the most fun characters to play as, especially first siren in the game. Her name is escaping me now, but Lilith is first and the second one is Maya, right?
I always get them mixed up too. That's the thing, though. That's why Moxie would actually be a really good siren, because it's not that they're forgettable characters, it's just so easy to mix them up because they carry over into the games. They're the same class and stuff. So to get one that's so different, that would make them stand out a little bit more, I feel.
But I will say that Borderlands 2 did a great job to flesh out those original characters, because in the first game, they were just so bland. And I guess as a protagonist, as a playable character, it's kind of hard to give them too much flavor, because then, most and most protagonists in games are meant to be kind of like this default palette where you can add your own personality to it. But Borderlands 2 did a great job adding character. But Moxie's already got character, right?
Yeah.
She's like, everyone loves her. Everyone loves speaking with her. I remember playing with my friend. Every time we visit Moxie, he just becomes so happy. So it'd be awesome to have her just along in your party.
Well, before we suggest some more ideas for playable characters in the third entry, what about returning Vault Hunters? I think that's what really made 2 a excellent game, was that when you brought in these original Vault Hunters, it added some real weight to the story in ways we won't spoil. And so, would you like to see, for example, Zero come back into Borderlands 3? And would you want them to be playable? Because for me, like, I'd like them to be playable, but also I'd like those original new characters. That's what's most exciting about Borderlands to me.
Yeah, and we'll talk about just having original characters because there is an argument to that. But I would definitely, at the very least, like to see them come back in the story, and including the ones from Borderlands 1, but I shouldn't mention too much about that. But anyways, I would love to see as many people come back as possible because it's really fan service. And they're part of the story now. You can't just ignore them. Maybe the one, I guess, exception to that would be characters in the pre-sequel, but I've never really played the pre-sequel. But at the very least, most people have played Borderlands 2 and would love to see those characters come back in some form. Although I don't think you could have any of them as playable, because who do you choose without kind of, I guess, disservicing any of the other characters? I don't think it'd be possible.
True. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him come back exactly as you said for story purpose. I don't know about playable unless what they did was go real gung-ho. I mean, they did say when they announced Borderlands 3 initially or started talking about it, they were like, this is the big one. So I was thinking to myself, what if they just went all out, brought back the first set of heroes, that the second set of heroes, and then a new set? You
know what? There's an argument to that. For example, I had this video out in the past whether Borderlands should increase its player cap. If it's not 8, maybe 6. And if you already have characters that you've created that arguably are balanced, but there could be issues there, but you've already set up the weapons and the skills and the abilities and all that kind of stuff, you could easily, or Gearbox could easily bring them back with not much effort and allow us to play as those original Vault Hunters if there is going to be more playable characters. If it's still going to be 4, then it probably makes sense just to have like 4 either new or returning characters that weren't necessarily Vault Hunters.
I definitely agree with that. It's also, let's say they utilize, this would be made strictly for, the Xbox One, PS4, so we'd be working with better technology compared to the PS3 and Xbox 360, so we could have more players in the game. That would bring back some of the graphical quality, although I think with Borderlands art style, it wouldn't hinder it too much. But I guess then we could look at a trade-off. Would we want more enemies, more gameplay options with 4 people, or we want 6 people playing together? It's already hard enough getting a squad of 4 people together, but I mean, if they went all out with like 6 playable characters and you could have a 6-man team and go out into an open world and just fuck shit up, to put it bluntly, I think that would be really cool too.
And just imagine how hard the enemies become with 6 players in there. I mean, with 4, it's hard enough. Usually the enemies scale up pretty tough. It will be fun though. To be honest, it'd be an absolute blast. So I'm not necessarily saying I'm demanding 4, 6 players or 8 players, but if they try to do 6 at least, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential there, and I think it fits into the idea of them adding more playable characters in general, because 2 ended up with 6, so I don't see why they wouldn't keep the trend going into Borderlands 3. I think that would be a pleasant surprise, because just the natural thought is, who are the big 4 going to be? Like, why not some more? Because replayability is the name of the game with Borderlands 3. It's about those new guns, building new classes, all that stuff, so why not switch it up?
And here's the thing. I know that there could be a lot of technical issues with increasing the player cap, but it has its benefits. One, we know that eventually, after a couple of months or whatever it is, you get DLC characters. So even if it's after 1 month after launch or whatever it is, you get 5 characters that are completely, like, you can play as, like, there are 5 total Vault Hunters in total. Even though there's 6 people and some people are probably going to be doubling up, that'll be fine. But also as well, it just gives you the ability to bring back old Vault Hunters. Because if you need to have completely original characters, if there are 6 people playing and no one can be the same person, for instance, I know that's not technically the rule, but if that's the way you want it, then why not bring back an old character to fill the void?
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, because then that could pad it out for more DLC down the line, keep the community active.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Borderlands is one of those few I don't want to call it a single player game, but one of those story games that is highly replayable, if you get what I'm saying. Not in the choice and consequence, but just there's so much to it that adding new characters and stuff like that, even if they're old ones, I think fans would happily accept. Given that there's not a price tag on them, and we don't want to get too off track on the whole DLC discussion, but I think there is definitely a lot of potential for them to bring back characters. Would you like to see them rework though? Let's say they bring back Zero. Would you like to see a whole new skill set for him, or would you rather see the same old? I'd rather go with the same old because I feel like it would just be a waste of resources.
You can have it tweaked a little bit, and slightly new abilities and slightly new items in the skill tree, but I feel like if you change it too much, I wouldn't want that. One last idea that I had jotted down, we just had to put it out there because I'll get into a second personally why I don't think it would work, but creating your own Vault Hunter. In Borderlands 2, we saw a smidge of experimentation. It's always been about, to some extent, customizing your experience with the weapons you're always constantly picking up. I feel like they're going to take it the next step further, maybe armor customization in the next one. We saw new skins, new heads in Borderlands 2. So we saw more and more customization, vehicle skins as well. And so I was thinking, what if you could create your own Vault Hunter? But I think part of what the flavor for a playable character is hearing their voice, hearing that exciting personality, and how they react to the world around them. Where I don't think it would work, as cool as the idea is. It would be tough as well, for example, when you're leveling up and you have different skill trees. They're set in stone, but what do you have for someone that's just a complete, nothing character? Like, there's no personality, there's no... Exactly, it's a completely blank slate. So do you borrow skills and abilities from other pre-existing heroes or hunters? Would that be the way to do it? Kind of like, I don't know if you ever played Mortal Kombat Armageddon, but you create your own character, but you would adopt skills and abilities from different characters. So for example, you could use Sub-Zero's freeze attack, right? But would that make sense? Like, could you realistically, could you use a Siren's abilities if you're not a Siren, for instance? I think it would be really hard to figure out a good skill set for that clean slate character, and I don't know how it would work. I don't think you could ever do it correctly. It would be interesting though, because for example, I could see a lot of jokes like when you accept a quest or something as the playable character, I'd imagine he wouldn't be voiced, he or she, and they just go, you don't talk much, huh? Something along those lines. I always love when games acknowledge the silent protagonist thing. It's the funniest thing. Like in Zelda
Jack
games
2.
do that all the time.
Yeah, Jack 2. I remember him saying like, you had that problem for a while. Daxter said it about like how Jack was quiet all the time and stuff. So those types of jokes can be funny, but I don't know if it would carry throughout a whole playthrough. I think that'll work. I'm more concerned about just, what is this character? What weapons is he or she proficient at? What skills can they use? It would just be, and then what's their signature skill, right? I mean, with Mordecai, you've got Bloodwing. With Maya, you've got her Siren ability. What do you give to this person? Do you let them choose? But would that make sense in terms of the story and the lore? Exactly. Yeah, I think because for those abilities, those skills to work and really feel exciting to invest in, I think it feeds off a lot of the character. Speaking of, we have 2 left on the list of specific names that we completely forgot about. Let's go with Mr. Torg. This was your idea, and I hadn't even thought of him. That's a really good idea. Mr. Torg would be awesome. And looking at his body, he's this big, bulky guy. He can be kind of like a brick, right? Where he's just fucking punching people or whatever it is, being that kind of melee person. But he's pretty funny too. Like, next to Tiny Tina, I'd consider him one of the kind of funnier characters in the Borderlands franchise, and we're talking about exactly like, what's really cool is that you got to treat women correctly, like shit like that he said. Exactly. And again, talking about hunters needing to have kind of personality and character, he's a perfect fit, and having him in your party would be an absolute blast throughout. Imagine like him with Moxie and Tina. It'd be fucking funny. Exactly. The one thing I have to mention, though, is I was thinking, because he's Mr. Torg, their weapons are more explosive focused. Tiny Tina, let's say she's in the game, she's demolition focused. I think you pitched a good idea of him being more melee built, but I was just thinking, would that be a gameplay clash where they're too similar in, how they like to blow stuff up pretty much? Well, look, I would explain. We said earlier, like, we'll just retcon them a little bit, but I guess I'm just thinking more of a narrow look at how the characters are now. Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. But again, like, if we can
let's put it this way. Let's say if Tina and Torg were playable characters, and then Torg could be like, well, I don't want to copy the same thing as Tina. She likes explosions. I'll start doing this. And again, he's got that kind of beefy, muscly body, and then he could just be similar to a Brick character.
True.
I think that would
and
be a good story way to
explain a lot,
it.
So yeah, he'd be a good melee character. The other guy I wanted to suggest would be Dr. Zed. I love this guy so much, and they've been having so many DLCs themed after him, much like a lot of the characters we've mentioned in this list so far, that I feel like he'd be an interesting and potentially cool class, because you never really had that healer. I mean, the Maya's Phase Lock can, for example, revive someone if you use it on them. But aside from that, I can't think of many. I think actually the turret for Axton might have a healing ability.
When you threw down the turret, it would revive someone.
Okay.
In the original Borderlands.
There are some revival things, but there's not that direct healer, and it would be really interesting to have someone with that real support skill set, like a Dr. Zed. I think would be a good fit for that, especially because he's like, always talking about, I'm not certified as a real doctor and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think it would be really funny to hear that, along with him being a support character.
It doesn't just have to be healing, right? I mean, I know healing is a big aspect of that. In the original Borderlands, I can't remember who Nova was playing as, but the way he could heal me was by shooting my character, right? And Zed could operate in a similar way, not just healing, but also giving ammo and maybe
like
even
I said, just
quickly regenerating your skill. Yeah.
That would. That's a good idea. Cool. Just regenerating skill. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But you also have to have a way that this person can attack. Like, they can't just be a Mercy clone, for instance, where they're pretty shitty at attacking, because that would be a very boring playthrough for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless, like I said earlier, they really just poured it on with the amount of enemies that come on screen. That's one thing they could do, but I think that would involve changing the entire game itself. But yeah, that's our entire list. That's what we have.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess at the end, we should quickly discuss... there's an argument there to say that Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, the playable characters that you had, they were all new and they were all original. Why? And I know pre-sequel with Claptrap is a bit of a retcon in that regard, but in most regards, they're new characters. Should Borderlands 3 stick to new and original characters and let those other returning characters come back as just NPCs?
Now, I will say this much is I think there would be an equal amount of excitement for me if I was playing Borderlands 3 and let's say we had these brand new original characters that if I bumped into Tiny Tina in the story, Moxie, of course, I'd imagine she's a shoo-in, Mr. Torg, etc. That like it would be like, oh yeah, there they are, this is awesome. And it would spice up the game some more. Where I wouldn't be too upset if they weren't playable. The only one that really shocked me that if they weren't playable was Tiny Tina. I feel like it's literally on everyone's list. And Gearbox does really well with listening to the Borderlands community. So that one would be the only one that I'd find personally jarring. But I do completely agree with the argument that, they've started off with original characters each time. We fell in love with them for their own reasons as they developed throughout the story. So,
but I guess as well with pre-sequel you had Handsome Jack too. I think, from memory. I never played it, so I had no fucking idea.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
He was never playable?
I thought it was Claptrap, Athena, Sir Hammerlock's sister? I don't... Yeah, you're going to have to check that real quick.
I want to check it fucking real time right now.
Yeah, go for it.
So
this is like a podcast, a mini podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, you had a body double of Handsome Jack. That's what it was. Ooh. Okay, you had Jack, Jack the doppelganger. Yeah, so it was a DLC character. I thought I wasn't going crazy. All right. So I guess that's kind of a retcon there too, because he's a doppelganger. He's not actually Jack, but it technically is, right?
Yeah.
So aside from him and Claptrap, exactly. Yeah. But for the most part, aside from those two, it's been new and original characters, and I do see the argument there for just having new characters, because when you get new characters, then you can have them come back in the stories for later Borderlands games. And we've seen, I love Mordecai. I love, Lilith, in terms of the playable characters, I think is the best.
Oh, God, yeah. They made her so
especially in the story.
In Borderlands, too.
Oh, she's fucking awesome, isn't she?
Yeah.
But, so I guess creating new characters creates the potential to have another Lilith personality, something fun to come back in a later game.
The other thing, though, is that then you bring in a whole new cast of characters. That has absolutely never hurt Borderlands thus far. I'm just thinking, let's say they bring him in more in 3. Let's say they are very lovable. Then you have this issue where, like a lot of games nowadays, you have so many good characters that you need to flush out.
True.
There's just not enough room to flush
True.
all of them out. So maybe bringing in these characters that have been established as side characters and making them playable. It didn't work out super well in the pre-sequel. I've personally only played 15-ish hours of that game. Like, not enough, and that was way back when it first came out. It just didn't impress me all too much. So we saw what happens when you bring back returning characters and make them playable. You know, how much of an impact does it really have on the experience? But yeah, here's the thing: is that I wouldn't really argue whichever way they decide to go with this. If they said
no, I wouldn't.
Original,
like, I wouldn't be upset.
It's like, yeah, definitely. If they were like, let's bring in these fan favorites, I'd be like, hell yeah. So,
yeah,
not gonna argue either side.
Or even just have 2 old Vault Hunters have a baby, and then we get the child as a playable character.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yes,
that would be sweet.
Oh yes, that would be awesome.
I mean, going back to Mortal Kombat, they kind of did that with X, right?
Yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah, they do that a lot. You know, like, who is Moxie dating in 2? Like, their kid.
Moxie dated everyone.
Yeah, true. Whoever she was currently dating.
I can't remember.
I forgot who it was, but, you know.
Yeah, have Moxie have a child with someone.
Yeah, exactly. That would be really funny. Because then then that person would have to grow up, and that would give Tiny Tina time to grow up.
Yeah, definitely. Tiny Tina has to be in. Like, I think if there's just one returning character that comes back playable, she's at the top of my list, without a doubt.
It looked like her in that tech demo. Just something about the one side of the leg. I think the pants were up a little bit.
Yeah.
It looked just. I thought to myself, that's an older Tiny Tina. It just had that feeling.
Fingers crossed.
Oh man, fingers crossed indeed. All right, well that definitely wraps up everything we had to say, I believe.
Yeah, sweet. It was a good video. We're about to record another one.
Yeah,
Bioshock.
Yep. We're just rolling into the next one, ladies and gentlemen. So you're going to get a lot of Australian on my channel, and on Lone's channel, you're going to get a lot more American, I guess. I don't know. But,
exactly.
Anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed. Let us know if you want Lone and I to talk about anything else in these kind of mini podcast discussion videos that end up going on super long. And
they're always fun to do.
Yeah, Lone, thank you for joining me, and I guess...
And thank you for joining me.
I was going to say, I guess I could go the other way because it's going to be on your channel too. This is the fucking weirdest part is like, who closes out the video now? Because like...
And who's like, we were like, well, who starts the video?
Yeah,
I'll start the next video. We'll make it even.
All right, yeah, sounds good. So then we're going to balance this out. I'll close out your video, so you close out mine here.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll catch you later.